This video is part of the GRESB Assessment Training Program. It will cover how to complete specific aspects in the Infrastructure Asset Assessment Performance component using the GRESB Assessment Portal. We'll go through indicators aspect by aspect, providing guidance and examples of how to report on each indicator in the assessment portal. For an overview of the structure of the indicators in the performance component, refer to the lesson titled Asset Assessment Performance Component Structure. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to complete the aspects water, waste, and biodiversity and habitat in the performance component of the infrastructure asset assessment. After this lesson, we recommend that you follow the lessons on other indicators in the performance component that are relevant to your entity. The first aspect in this lesson is water, which contains two related indicators. Water withdrawal is any water obtained or taken in by the entity. This can be from natural sources or designated water suppliers, as well as water taken in for wastewater treatment. Water discharge covers any water released by the entity. As with withdrawal, this may be to natural sources such as rivers or lakes, to third parties such as sewage treatment plants, or as fresh water to customers. There is an indicator for each of these water categories since they have separate but related issues with different impacts on the environment. The first indicator covers water inflows and/or withdrawals. Only answer yes if you can report all of the mandatory metrics in the performance table. Note that all water metrics are in megaliters, so you may need to make your own conversions in some instances. There are several tools and calculators freely available online to do so. Report water withdrawn by the source from which it came. For example, if an entity has taken in groundwater, it should be reported under the metric groundwater. The scored metric is total withdrawals. To obtain full points for the indicator, entities should provide targets for the reporting year and a future year for the scored metric. Note that the targets for the scored metric are not calculated automatically. Percent potable water is a calculated metric and is any water that was obtained from potable sources. It is calculated by dividing the metric third-party potable water by the total withdrawals and multiplying this by 100. Total HWS withdrawals refers to any withdrawals from areas with high or extremely high baseline water stress. This is a subset of total withdrawals. Entities should assess whether they are withdrawing water from any areas that could be considered to be under high or extremely high baseline water stress and enter this mandatory value. High water stress areas can be identified in the World Resources Institute's Water Risk Atlas tool called Aqueduct. The second table in this indicator is the intensities table. The reporting year performance data for this table is calculated automatically based on the values provided in the table above. The second indicator in the water aspect is water outflows and/or discharges. Again, only answer yes if you can report all of the mandatory metrics in the performance table. The first table, quality of water discharged to sensitive waterways, only concerns water discharged to groundwater, seawater or brackish water, and surface water. It is split between fresh water and other water. Other water is any water that contains more than 1,000 milligrams of total dissolved solids, or TDS per liter. The entity should report water exported or discharged by the destination to which it was sent. For example, if an entity has released water into a lake, it should report it under the metric surface water. Water supplied to customers can be reported under third-party reuse. The scored metric is total sensitive discharge, which is calculated as the sum of the metrics groundwater, sea or brackish water, and surface water. To obtain full points for the indicator, entities should provide targets for the reporting year and a future year for the scored metric. Note that the targets for the scored metric are not calculated automatically. Percent recycled is another calculated metric and is any water that was sent to be reused or recycled. It is calculated by dividing the metric third-party reuse by the total water discharged and multiplying by 100. Non-compliance refers to any instances during the reporting year when an entity did not meet legal requirements with regards to water discharge. The second table in this indicator is the intensities table. The reporting year performance data for this table is calculated automatically based on the values provided in the table above. The next aspect is waste. This diagram helps to explain the tables for waste reporting. For all sectors except waste facilities, waste is generated by the asset and then disposed of, usually off-site. For these cases, simply report waste generated in the first table and waste disposed of in the second. Waste facilities are a special case because they import waste for processing and then dispose of it on or off-site. The tables have been structured to allow flexibility, so waste facilities can simply report the waste imported in the first table and again waste disposed of in the second. The indicator covers any waste generated and disposed of by the entity. Waste generated or imported by the entity should be reported in the table generation or import. Waste reported should be broken down as hazardous or non-hazardous. This table must not be used to report waste imported for energy generation. This is considered an energy fuel and must be reported in the energy indicator. Next, the entity should report how the generated waste was disposed of by destination. Unknown should be used only if the entity cannot obtain information on where waste is disposed to. The metric, total diverted from landfill or incineration, is calculated automatically. It is calculated by adding up the metrics reuse, recycling, composting, and waste to energy, and dividing this number by the metric total disposed, then multiplying by 100. The metric total diverted from landfill or incineration is also the scored metric. To obtain full points for the indicator, entities should provide targets for the reporting year and a future year for the scored metric. Note that the targets for the scored metric are not calculated automatically. The third table in this indicator is the intensities table. The reporting year performance data for this table is calculated automatically based on the values provided in the tables above. The final environmentally focused aspect in the performance component is biodiversity and habitat. This aspect covers wildlife and habitat management. Wildlife fatalities should be reported in the first table. T&E species means threatened and endangered species. The second table covers habitat management. The entity should report all values as absolute numbers. The metric net habitat gain is calculated automatically by adding the metrics habitat removed, habitat enhanced or restored, habitat protected on-site, and habitat protected off-site. Net habitat gain is also the scored metric. To obtain full points for the indicator, entities should provide targets for the reporting year and a future year for the scored metric. Note that the targets for the scored metric are not calculated automatically. The metric habitat maintained is reported outside this equation. The third table in this indicator is the intensities table, which follows the same format as previous indicators. Thank you for taking the time to complete this lesson. We hope that it helped you get a better understanding of the asset assessment performance component and prepared you to complete this component accurately. We recommend that you take the lessons on other indicators in the performance component that are relevant to your entity next. If you have any questions, please contact the GRESB Help Desk at gresb.com/contact.